morning. Welcome to Quick and Early Miracles. Today I will be talking about healing or change and ways to think about it or play around with it. And I'm going to take a breath and get myself centered for a second. Hey. So there's a lot happening around this conversation right now, which is incredible. What up? And what the conversation includes is an awareness of how people have been treating themselves and treating others isn't necessarily necessary. That's great, right? And so there are a lot of people who have explored how that isn't and what could be separately, and everybody's adding to this conversation. It's been going on for evs probably, but it seems to really be burgeoning right now. And the direction of the change is really to greater respect and love for self and greater respect and love for others. And part of that process, or like the majority of it, is inside out, which is cool, right? That means all the quotes, including Michael Jackson's song, you start with the man in the mirror, which is great. It means you don't have to go anywhere to change the world. And that change comes from a growing awareness and acceptance of yourself. And that is not always the most fun or comfortable path. It depends what you have as a program when you start the path about confidence in yourself, confidence in life, and ways to deal with new information. Hey. So, the word program, I have a few articles on Medium about this. It's to represent how our beliefs play a role in our functioning. They're invisible. Stuff goes in and stuff goes out, and you have this little paper. You don't see what happens at that calculation level. You don't see how the program interprets, translates, and then recommends reality. You only see and you experience. And the experience printout informs you on what is important and how to respond. The printout is not reality. The printout is your interpretation of reality. And the programs that you run in interpreting reality include the ones that were given to us culturally, and those would be ones around maybe the other countries, hard work, what women and men should be like. They could also be programs that you got at a family level. You have to eat everything on your plate. You're not important. There are all types of ideas or beliefs that we develop, and we use these beliefs to interpret the world around us. And essentially, the programs determine our response. And so when we look at free will, you're choosing off of a menu. So the menu has already been filtered by what you believe, what you think is possible. So you're saying, do I want to do this? Do I want to do that? Look at me, I'm free. I could pick between 3 or 4 things. Well, usually, if you're in a place that has lack or pain or occurring difficulties, it means that the options that you see that are available aren't all the options that there are. And there must be a better option if you're not able to generate a solution, which means it's time to look at your programs. So when it comes to doing this work, you can come at it from 2 sides. So at least, these are the 2 sides that I'm most familiar with. And there is a passive approach and an active approach, and it generally seems they go together. You can lean wholly on this one, you can lean wholly on this one, but it seems best if you let them work together. So when we're looking at cleaning up your programs, cleaning up your beliefs, you can do it the one way, which is more passive, is similar to what you would do if you were cleaning a glass of dirty water out. So it doesn't make sense for a homeboy here to go into this, glass with floating debris with a spoon and try to catch it, because it's also kind of like broken apart and it's in the water and it squiggles when you go to get it. I mean, he could do that and he would be there for a while, or he could pour in clear water and that would clean it out. You pour in clean water by being very mindful of your moment. So your moment is the spout of life. Your moment is where the clean water comes from, and being present or mindful of your moment is noticing whenever you're telling a story about what is. So a story about what is basically like reading your printout. You can't tell that there are other stories to tell. You only see what's on your printout. And so on your printout, you're saying like, I had to do this because, and they made me feel like that, and let's solve what they're doing. How do I fix it? Those are programs. You wouldn't think that way, except that you think that way. And so to clear the glass of that program, you take a breath when you notice that your brain is running about that story, and you just get quiet. You breathe. In other presentations, I talked about how this is similar to letting a path grow over in the woods. If there's a path that's walked through the woods and somebody new shows up to the forest, they take the path. Well, it's that or the brush. It just kind of guides activity through this maze of interpretation. The path itself isn't anything special. It's just there because it's there. Similarly, if you allowed that path to grow over, you could walk a new one. And that's what we're doing when we're rewriting programs and you're using the clean water method. Rather than walk the old path and start singing the song about what is or what can be or why or blah, blah, blah. Like explaining why shit is the biggest trap. The biggest trap. And maybe that's the exaggeration. I'll say it's like top 10 at least. It's in the Billboard 100. And so instead of telling or explaining the story about what's going on or why, or trying to solve it at a mental level, which is really, again, just reinforcing the programs that you have, just continuing to walk the path in the woods that just goes nowhere, you are mindful of the moment and you just practice stilling your mind. Great ad, Shauna, thank you. Not everything needs a story, amen. One storyteller to another. Let me tell you about a story about that. All right, so this is the clean water method, where you update or allow yourself to update really by not interrupting your moment with more information about what you don't want. And it doesn't mean, so like this goes to the 2-part system. So this is the passive side. The active side, I've got a little garden here with the sun and a shovel, and there are different plots of land. This doesn't mean that you don't show up to the garden and dig. Oh, no. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. While you move through life after attaining, let's say like a clear glass or more mindfulness of your moment or any kind of like awareness of God, it doesn't mean you stop gardening. At certain points, perhaps, and for some people, maybe there can be instantaneous gardening. I think we're going that way. I know people who can do magical stuff like that. But at this point, until you're there, it's both. It means then that you continue to do stuff, but you're doing it with like a happy, joyful, knowing shovel. And the shovel is the joy that you would expect to find later. So you don't need the glass to be clear or clean for your experience of the water. So when we're coming back to the moment being the place of where it's at, this clarity, this allowance of life, this faith, is the same experience that you think you'll find when you're healed. And so you don't need to be the whole way healed to have fun while you're doing the work, the shoveling work. And, the shovel, it could be raking, it could be planting, like it doesn't, there's no significance behind the dig meaning, except that was the picture that came to me to draw. So maybe it does, I'm not sure. But as far as consciously, I was not thinking that. And so coming to this, I like kind of circling around, and I like to invite questions from the crowd as they're there. when we're looking at healing, I talked about how it has kind of like two parts to it. And one part is passive, even though it's not the passive. Mind work is the most intentional work you can do. It's real easy. I've been seeing post-it notes that it's time for me to stop swearing. It's maybe because I can reach children, I'm not sure. But when it comes, so if you hear me swear, beep me, okay? I'm gonna beep me too. So when it comes to, where was that going? I was talking about the two part system. So, I was saying that mental activity, like focusing work, is the hardest work, I think, at first, because you have so much practice of just a bunch of chickens running everywhere. And it takes some time to learn how to get the chickens to organize. And you don't get the chickens to organize through chasing them. You get the chickens to organize by having a very clear, orderly coop where they go. You know what you're doing with the chickens and why you're doing it. And so it's not about chasing it anymore. It's about the home and the center that you build for them and for yourself. So what I'm saying is this passive work of allowing the glass to clean is actually pretty powerful and intentional. But when I say passive, I mean you can't really see it. When we're looking at the active work, which is like what you say, what you do with your hands, how you use your time, like with your body, that's what I'm calling active work. And you can check out all day long if you want. Let's say that you're stacking books. You could start stacking books and say reading the back, the texture of this one's heavy, and then your head goes off and you're like, I wonder what that guy's doing. And so you're not here. When you go those other places, what you're trying to do is essentially feel better than you feel in the moment through your imagination, which is fine, except wouldn't it be cool if your life reflected how good you feel there? And the only way to really do that is through applying your focus to the world around you. That was some of the hardest work I've ever done, was kind of bringing my escapist tendencies closer to the ground. And occasionally there'll be wind or fear or a round of change that comes up that will kind of recall those patterns, but my relationship to them is different. So I'm still gardening, but my relationship to the gardening is different. When I have an opportunity like that, I'm not coming at it from this is wrong, this is bad. I come at it from love. I'm like, oh cool, this is what we're doing. Great, I get to practice this. Isn't this fun? Isn't it amazing to feel this uncomfortable? How glorious to be alive. And I think that's so, for me, I wish, I probably wouldn't have believed it, but I wished, I might have even heard people say it, them emphasize on this path, it's very humble. You're coming to a place of simplicity and beauty and truth and harmony, which necessarily isn't sports cars or, it's not this, it can have components of that. Those aren't wrong. It's just saying your value system starts to shift as your sense of self expands, because you want to, in being love to all things, it has more of that hippie guru mentality, because you see the effect of not that. So it's more challenging to be consumeristic-y when you see that cycle doesn't necessarily respect the environment the whole way. And what I'm loving, and I think is amazing to see, is this transition where it doesn't have to be either or. And so we can provide those experiences, those conveniences for people in a way that is more holistic, in a way that allows for more pieces to be supported and lifted rather than pressed down for another to rise. So coming back to this, I was saying about escapism. So, your moment is really, this is it. And I can't verify this anyway, except it bumps up against other things I've read or have heard or my friends have experienced. But it seems like when the water is getting cleared, sometimes where the water isn't clear, let's see, how can I explain this? Where the water isn't clear, Good morning. It's like in your moment, in my moment, and this might have been just because of how much stuff I had going on inside of me that I didn't know how to align or direct the whole way. Sometimes it's a lot. You know, when you're looking around your life, if you're, okay, here's how it ties in. So let's say you're in your moment and you're like, okay, Shay, I'll be here. You come into your moment, but then your mind thinks that it's here and it detaches a little, dissociates a little, and crawls time and space and says like, oh man, for you to achieve what you want, for you to fix that, to fill in that hole in the ground, for you to do these things, it's going to be all this. And remember how you don't have this and this is like that. And all of these feelings flood your moment, but they're not as much feeling as thought. And so then it's like, I'll never be able to overcome that. And you sort of dissociate and escape. At the same time, and this is what I don't know if it's verifiable or not, when I came into my present, I had a lot to feel. And the best that I can guess is that it's something to do with my emotional body. And even then, it wasn't, you can develop a relationship to it that's allowing. So rather than throw up the switch that's like, off, turn this off, eject, you say, okay, on. I opt into the life that's present for me. I'll feel what I have to feel. And over time, then, that helps with the water clearing. That's just sort of like what I found. I don't know if that's helpful for others or true for others, but I found that I can't, like, and it might be a part of the programming, the deeper programming, but it does seem like there is a feeling component to this. It's not just a mental activity. And one way to think about that too is if I'm coaching somebody or supporting somebody into a new level, one of the blocks is they don't want to feel stuff. What if they cross the threshold and they're rejected? What if they cross the threshold, get the prize, and then the prize is stolen? What if they get out there and everybody that loved them before was like, who do you think you are? So they have these fears that act as barriers to crossing the threshold, but they can't necessarily notice that. What they think instead is, so, how do I get myself over this line? You're going over the line. You'd be going over the line, except for that your fear is like, it's not safe, pause. So it does seem like if you make space to feel those fears, if you develop a relationship with these feelings you don't really want to have, loss, sadness, frustration, rejection, then they don't own you anymore. The program kind of updates. And that's like, again, so going back to this idea of like what you're achieving, it's really acceptance and allowance. It's not necessarily a perfect set of circumstances, although the clearer and cleaner and more centered you are, the higher quality your choices are. And so they add up to like, better things. And also you just feel better because you're not all the time saying like, this is wrong, this is wrong. So, and it also does seem like through the election of a more aligned interpretation, sort of saying like, I see this in faith, I see this in love, it does seem like it has an instantaneous effect on reality as well, where then what you perceive aligns with that. So in a room full of stimulus, what you perceive aligns with that awareness rather than one of like, what's going to be a threat. So it seems faceted. So in summary, what I presented today was for healing, kind of two models and how they work together. You have the one model of clearing the glass, letting the glass be cleaned rather through the addition of new water rather than fishing out the dirt. And you do that, and the dirt here are beliefs or programs you're using to process life that don't serve you or keep you small. And you do that by allowing your moment, practicing faith and mindfulness in your moment, which means that you're not telling stories about what's wrong. You're noticing if you start to run off and emphasize like, oh, that guy did this, I can't believe it, what am I? All of that is putting more dirt in the glass because it's separation. It's saying like, there is another, I'm not this. And it takes a little time to practice this, but you can also let it be easy and fun. Like a lot of, so I'm sitting up here talking about what I perceive to be kind of, crucial things. They're like behind all the quality of life. And I'm using, this drawing of a shovel, which is to say you don't have to be serious about this. In fact, it's easier if you don't. The more playful you are, the easier it is to stay in this state. It's okay if you're having a good time while you clean up the stuff on the floor. Why would you have to be miserable about it? If you have to clean up the stuff on the floor and you're miserable, who does that serve? What does that do? Nothing, as far as I can tell. And a lot of this is like predicated on the ability to forgive. And what you're forgiving is others, but also the self. Because as your sense of awareness starts to expand and you see where you thought somebody else was doing something, but it was really a choice that you made, or you have control here, but you were giving it to them, like you kind of feel like you screwed yourself over. You're in a relationship with yourself and you weren't good to you. And that's okay, you didn't know any better, and it's also a process to organize these pieces forward, or it can be. Sometimes there are like snaps and they all line up and that's beautiful, and sometimes they don't. I was thinking about this the other day. I did an interview with Dr. Dwayne Hardman last week for his channel, and he is a teacher of God consciousness, and he has this incredible skill set to facilitate the remembrance of that like self below all the other selves. So really like instantaneous healing. And while we were talking, like I agree that this state, this moment, this is what God consciousness is. It's a state of awareness. That is the portal through which all healing occurs. There's nothing. The illusion at the top of all the other illusions is that you're not God, you're not an aspect of divine. If you focus on that primary illusion, if you focus on just contemplating God all the time, and God is a really loaded word. It took me a while to even be able to read it. When I say it now, it's not at all the way that it comes from a church. I'm sure there's some overlap, but I'm talking about it like a personal relationship to life, a personal relationship to myself. When I say God, I mean life, I mean myself, I mean all that exists beyond me, of which I'm a part. The idea that you're separate from that is the illusion to heal. And then from there, you have all these other illusions that break apart. Like it's almost like this, you can address these down here, you can address the idea that your boss did this, or that happened in your childhood, or you can work on just this one. And to be honest, like on my journey, I did all these like as much as I could manually, like one by one. I'm like, if you followed my Instagram since 2017, I was out there saying like, shedding myself, I'm new again, I'm different. What I was looking for was this, and it wasn't until the last kind of like year and a half or 2 years where it really hit me, like all that other stuff I don't need to fix. They're just illusions downstream from that primary one. And if I can really practice embodying this and allowing this, which I have found to be true through like a bunch of different avenues, then these other things are like they're non-things. But at first on your path, and like the path is to really, self-ownership, self-love, self-acceptance, sometimes this seems too far away. You might need more to hold on to before you jump up there. And so that means like allow yourself to play down here. If it's easier for you to accept that your mom was that way because her mom was that way, and you can forgive her because she didn't know, which means then you can forgive you for when you don't know. If it's easier for you to get some momentum with some things up close, do that. Look and do it. Beep, then do it. Any questions or thoughts or feelings before I close today? So I just wanted to emphasize I am emphasizing that what you're allowing is really the nature of gardening to change, not necessarily like the act of gardening. I used I don't know who said it, Wu Wei Zen. Before enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. After enlightenment, chop wood, carry water. Your act of living, as far as I could tell, progresses. It certainly changes and evolves, but you're still here. And from my vantage point, what brought into my awareness is like, oh, maybe it'd be cool if like this was nice then. You know, like how do we allow for like, if this is where I am, how can I, you know, set up the garden to best support everybody else? Because it's my garden and it's their garden and they're going to be in my garden, you know, like we're all here together. So it allows for this awareness of oneness, this kind of like support of like, hey, look, happy gardeners here together. All right. Any thoughts, feelings, comments, questions before I close? I'm also going to plug these again because I have some decks out in circulation. I'm getting really good feedback on them from the people who are using them. So I designed these graphics, like I pulled together images to make these, and I have them printed. So they're oracle cards, essentially a way for you to connect with some of the things that you might not be allowing into your awareness. So when we're looking at like how this works, it's kind of like, imagine that you are a sommelier or you are a cake taste tester. You know, when you consume those things, you're like, oh, it has hints of burgundy. This reminds me of this. It's got that, you know, what this wheat is from Wheatland, you know, whatever it is. And then you can use that information to create a picture or tell a story, kind of like work with it differently. Or I don't know how you would work with it differently, but that's what these do for the energy around you. It kind of like helps you better connect with what's present, what's there, what's happening right now. And that might influence the choice that you make because you might see a little bit differently. Hey. So for example, this card is about changing programs. This is the butterfly matrix. And when you're looking at changing programs, like I said, it's changing beliefs. This is what we talked about today. And so sometimes I pull this card and like I pulled it yesterday. I'm going through some big personal transformation right now. And I got this card and a couple other ones I kept on my counter, but they're over there right now. But it helps me see that this is what's occurring. And so then I'm not resisting what I'm feeling. I'm not resisting what's happening. I'm sort of acknowledging like, okay, this is a process in play, which means like, how do I work with it? That would be the same as if you notice that there was like construction on your street. You can get yourself all in a tizzy that you can't drive up to the front of your house like you usually do, or you can see that they're doing construction and you're just gonna have to like change your move your process for a little bit until that's complete. So the same thing here, like if I pull this card, depending on what it is, I know that it's okay for me to be gentler with myself, to accept that, you know, some things are like going down or falling away, and I'm allowing for my relationship to things to change. And usually like this is an awkward period for me. And it's awkward because whenever you're responding to things, you respond generally from a program. Like I was talking about, the printout, like how you respond to life until you're really wholly just here. And even then, I think there's still some filtering. You're responding from the printout. Your programs say these are the things that you can do here. These are your options. And when your programs update, it changes what your options are. And if you've never picked one of those options before, it can be a little awkward at first. You're like, it kind of like the light bulb goes on and you're like, wait, I can tell them that? And the rest of you is like, yeah, why wouldn't you? But maybe for years you didn't think you could tell them that. So it's really being open to the process, open to what's present for you so that you can make those new choices and go new places and make a new path in the woods. All right, thanks everybody for coming in. Oh yeah, so these are available on my website, habitbook.com, and I'm printing them at cost. So that means essentially that you'll get a really cute card on the front of the cards that has a QR code and some notes, and that will take you to a site where you use this digital booklet, which is also, I think, cute, to find. That means they don't come with a printed little book, but they come with an ebook, and they also come with some worksheets so that you can use them through time. A lot of oracle decks. I don't know if that's a fair statement. It seems like when I'm coming at this, I'm emphasizing like your creative power, which means that you're making choices all the time about what to interpret and what's there. Or sometimes in using divination tools, it can seem like it's happening to you. And I really want to reinforce, like, you have the power, play in power. Like, this is, you're there. Like, if it's in your world, like, it's you know, the primary illusion of separateness, like, you've invited it or you've created it. There is a relationship there between you and the thing, which is inseparable, which means how you approach it can be more like, hey buddy, hey dirty thing on my front step, like, come on in, like, let's do this. You see things as for you instead of against you, and that changes what shows up for you on the program list. Hey Randy, I hope you're feeling better. Okay, love you guys, bye.